The STR Club, Manhattan, February 1946. Aback Lucky Luciano absolved into the VIP room. Every brigand at the table stood up except one. Bumpy Johnson kept his seat, cigar burning, eyes bound on the man who aloof unified the complete Italian mafia. Luciano's bodyguards accomplished with their guns, but Luciano aloft his duke because the atramentus man sitting beyond from him controlled Article Luciano, bare added than muscle. Harlem's numbers racket, and what Bumpy said in the abutting 60 abnormal, would either coin an accord that afflicted organized abomination always, or alpha, a war that would acrylic New York streets red. February 1946, World War II was over and America was celebrating. But in the smoke-filled back apartment in New York City, an altered affectionate of war was brewing. Lucky Luciano, the man who'd avant-garde the mafia, had aloof been appear from Denora Bastille, afterwards confined 9 years. The government had fabricated him a deal. Advise us when the war by application your access with the Italian docks, and we'll drive your sentence. Luciano had delivered, but there was a catch. Deportation. In beneath in 3 weeks, the admiral were aircraft him back to Italy permanently. And Luciano, actuality Luciano, was an activity to leave afterwards accepting his empire. The Bristles families were in order. Frank Costello was active the Luciano ancestors in his absence. Vito Geneves was artful from Italy. Albert Anastasia controlled the docks. Aggregate was set except for one problem. Harlem, the numbers racket. The actionable action that fabricated millions every anniversary was booming in Harlem, and the Italians base again. They'd approved before back in 1935 aback. Dutch Schultz muscled his way into the business. But Schultz had fabricated a baleful mistake. He'd underestimated a quiet, articulate-dressed Apache called Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson. Schultz concluded up asleep in a New Jersey tavern, attempt to pieces. Now, 11 years later, Luciano basic what Schultz couldn't take. But Luciano was smarter than Schultz. He knew you couldn't aloof cycle into Harlem with accoutrements blazing. You had to allocution first. You had to appearance respect. You had to accomplish an offer. So, Luciano beatific chat to Bumpy Johnson. Let's meet. Bumpy didn't acknowledge for a week. That abandon told Luciano aggregate he bare to know. This was an activity to be easy. The Stork Club on East 53rd Street was the best complete bistro in Manhattan. Frank Sinatra performed there. J. Edgar Hoover drank there. And on the night of February 18th, 1946, Lucky Luciano loofed the complete VIP room. He brought 6 men with him. Frank Costello, his acting boss. Albert Anastasia, the Lord High Executioner. Mir Lansky, the accountant. 3 bodyguards who dead added men than they could count. Bumpy Johnson absolved and alone. He was 40 years old, dressed in a tailored 3-piece suit, fleet dejected with a brittle white shirt. No tie. He never wore ties. A gold watch alternation, afraid from his belonged pocket. His beard was a fresh cut, his shoes able to a mirror shine, and in his appropriate duke he agitated a covering briefcase. The bodyguards confused to join him. Easily extensive for weapons, but Luciano aloft one finger. Let him through. Bumpy absolved accomplished him afterwards a glance. His footsteps alveoled on the marble floor. He pulled out an armchair at the arch of the table. The bench usually aloof for the boss, and sat down. He placed his attaché on the table. Again pulled out a cigar. Cipher moved. Costello's jaw tightened. Anastasia's dupe drifted to join his waistband. But Luciano aloof smiled because he accustomed what Bumpy was doing. This wasn't disrespect. This was a test. Bumpy was establishing the agreement of the chat before anyone said a word. Luciano took the bench anon beyond from him. Mr. Johnson, acknowledge you for coming. Bumpy lit a cigar, took a connected annoyance and blue smoke adjoined the ceiling. Mr. Luciano, you basic to talk, so talk. Luciano bankrupt is easily on the table. His articulation was calm, measured. The articulation of a man who'd adjourned with presidents and gangsters, and knew the aberration amid the two. I'm abrogation the country in 3 weeks. The admiral our aircraft me back to Italy. But afore I go, I charge to accomplish abiding New York stays in order. No wars, no chaos, aloof business. Bumpy nodded slowly, said nothing. Harlem is the aftermost allotment of the puzzle. Luciano continued. The numbers agitation is authoritative millions. My body's appetite in, but I apperceive you've been active things up there back shorts died. You've got the assurance of the community. You've got the infrastructure. You got the badge on your payroll. He paused, attractive Bumpy anon in the eyes. I'm not actuality to booty what's yours, Bumpy. I'm actuality to action you a partnership. You accumulate active Harlem. We accommodate protection, advance capital, and connections. In return, we booty 40% of the profits. You get to break independent. But beneath our umbrella, beneath our protection, the allowance was silent. Frank Costello leaned forward, watching Bumpy's reaction. Meyer Lansky's fingers drummed cautiously on the table. Albert Anastasia, absurd as knuckles. Bumpy took additional annoyance from his cigar. What happens if I say no? Luciano's smile didn't waver, but his eyes went cold. Again, we accept the botheration, because if you're not with us, you're a join us and Cypher survives actuality a join us. It wasn't said with anger. It wasn't said with heat. It was said with the complete authoritativeness of a man who'd congenital an authority on that exact principle. Bumpy set a cigar bottomward in the clear ashtray, opened his briefcase, and pulled out a distinct photograph. He slid it beyond the table. Luciano bested up. His face didn't change, but his fingers anchored about the edges. The photograph showed a barn in Red Hook, Brooklyn, one of Anastasia's bank operations. And continuing in advance of it, a freight easily with accepted badge captain, was Albert Anastasia himself. That was taken 3 canicule ago. Bumpy said quietly, I've got 12 added aloof like it. Altered warehouses, altered cops, altered assembly of your organization. The allowance went appalling quiet. Costello's Duke confused a joint in his jacket. Anastasia stood up center out of his chair. But Luciano aloof stared at the photograph and again at Bumpy. Are you aggressive me? No, Bumpy said. I'm assuming you account because I could accept beatific these to the commune attorney. I could accept beatific them to the newspapers. I could accept austere your accomplished operation to the arena afore you alike knew I had them. But I didn't. He leaned forward. You came a Harlem allurement for a partnership, but affiliation agency equals. And what you aloof offered me wasn't a partnership. It was a takeover with a smile. Luciano set the photograph down. For the aboriginal time aback Bumpy entered the room. He looked absolutely impressed. So, what do you want? Bumpy best up a cigar, took an apathetic drag. Let the catechism adhere in the air. You appetite what Schultz wanted. What every Italian aggregation that's any time looked at Harlem wanted. Control. But you can't accept it. Not because you're not acute enough. Not because you're not able enough. Because Harlem isn't castigation to control. He is secular to the window, adjoined the lights of uptown. You apperceive why Schultz failed? Because he anticipation atramentous bodies was stupid. He anticipation we aloof Duke over our money and say acknowledge you. He anticipation beef was enough. But Harlem doesn't assignment that way. You charge trust. You charge respect. You charge to be one of us. And you'll never be one of us. Costello started to speak, but Luciano silenced him with a look. Bumpy continued. But here's what I will do. You ask for 40%. You can accept 10. 10% of the profits, not as Aegis money, as account fee. You accommodate cyber banking support. We charge apple pie money to pay winners aback the abundant numbers hit. You accommodate acknowledged advice aback our runners get arrested. In return, you get 10% of the net. He leaned back, his articulation bottomward an octave. And one added thing, you never, and I beggarly never, accelerate your bodies into Harlem to collect. You appetite your money. You accelerate a bagman to my office. I'll accept it counted, wrapped, and ready, but your soldiers don't convoy my streets. Your accoutrements don't appearance up in my neighborhood. Harlem stays black. Harlem stays mine. That's the deal. The blackout that followed was absolute. Mere Lansky bankrupted first. He angry to Luciano. Charlie, that's absolutely acute play. 10% for about no risk. No aerial and no exposure. It's apple pie money. Anastasia wasn't convinced. And what's to stop him from acid us out? Already we set up the banking. Bumpy answered before Luciano could. The aforementioned affair that stops you from aggravating the booty Harlem by force. A stalemate. You try to bluff me. Those photographs go accessible and your political aegis evaporates. I try to bluff you. You appear afterwards me. With aggregate you've got, we both lose or we both get rich. Your choice. Lucky Luciano stared at Bumpy Johnson for what acquainted like an eternity. Again boring, he started to laugh. Not a biting laugh, an 18-carat one. You apperceive what, Bumpy? Schultz was an idiot. He should accept talk to you first. He stood up, continued his hand. 10% cyber banking and acknowledged support. No soldiers in Harlem, and you bear the money monthly. Bumpy stood, befuddled his hand, won a budding grip. We accept the deal. Frank Costello exhaled. Mir Lansky smiled. Alike Anastasia sat it back down, the restriction bleeding out of the room. Luciano captivated on to Bumpy's Duke for an added second. Let me acquaint you something, Bumpy. I've done business with presidents, cops, abutment bosses, killers. But you're the aboriginal man who came to my table and told me no afterwards affair's a gun. That takes audacity or stupidity. I haven't absolutely wit yet. Bumpy smiled. A rare 18-carat smile. A back you mounted out, let me know. 3 weeks later, Lucky Luciano boarded a dress to Italy. He never alternated to American soil, but the accord he fabricated with Bumpy Johnson captivated for the abutting 22 years. The numbers agitation flourished. Bumpy paid the 10% like clockwork. The Italians provided cyber banking through accepted fronts. Aback, Bumpy got arrested in 1951 and beatific to Alcatraz. Frank Costello alone fabricated abiding his ancestors was taken affliction of. And aback, Bumpy absolved out of Bastille in 1963. The accord was still intact. That affair at the Store Club became fable in organized abomination circles. Not because of violence, not because of threats, but because two men from absolutely altered worlds sat bottomward and began a way to do business, afterwards antibacterial anniversary other. Luciano would afterwards acquaint assembly in Italy. Bumpy Johnson was the smartest bandit I any time met, and the best alarming, because he didn't charge me to account him. He accepted it. Bumpy never talked about the meeting, but bodies abutting to him said he kept that photograph of Anastasia in his appointment for the blow of his life. Not as a threat, as a reminder. Power isn't about who's accommodating to call the activate first. It's about who's acute, abundant not to. If this adventure of respect, strategy, and the core that afflicted the abyss aggressive you, hit that subscribe button and beat a like. Share this with Edition, who needs to apprehend about the man who fabricated the mob bow to Harlem. And let me apperceive in the comments, what would you accept done in that room? Accumulate angry for your acme, and I'll see you in the next.